Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. The day started like any other on our family farm. I woke up at the crack of dawn, threw on my worn jeans and flannel shirt, and headed out to tend to the animals. The crisp morning air filled my lungs as I made my way to the barn, the familiar sense of hay and livestock greeting me. Our farm had been in my family for generations. My great-grandfather had built it from nothing, working the land with his bare hands until it became the thriving 200-acre property it is today. We weren't rich by any means, but we were proud of what we had and the hard work it represented. As I finished up the morning chores, I heard the distant rumble of a car coming up our long gravel driveway. Curious, I stepped out of the barn to see who it could be. We didn't get many visitors out here, especially not this early in the morning. A shiny black SUV pulled up, kicking up dust as it came to a stop. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped a woman who looked like she'd just walked off the set of some reality TV show about rich housewives. Her platinum blonde hair was perfectly styled, and she wore designer sunglasses that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked over to greet her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" I asked, trying to keep the confusion out of my voice. She looked me up and down, her nose wrinkling slightly as if she'd smelled something unpleasant. "Are you the owner of this property?" she asked, gesturing vaguely at the farm around us. "Yes, ma'am," I replied. "This is my family's farm. Has been for 4 generations now. Is there something I can do for you?" The woman's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, I'm afraid there's been a bit of a misunderstanding. You see, I've recently purchased this land, and I'm here to take possession of it." I blinked. Sure, I must have misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" "There must be some mistake. This farm isn't for sale. It's been in my family for over 100 years. She let out a little laugh, the kind that made my skin crawl. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I think you're the one who's mistaken. I have the paperwork right here." She reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a folder, waving it in front of me. "This land is mine now, and I'm going to need you to vacate the premises immediately." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This couldn't be happening. There was no way my family would have sold the farm without telling me. "Ma'am, I don't know where you got those papers, but there's no way they're legitimate. We haven't sold this land to anyone." Her smile turned cold. "Listen, I don't have time for this. I paid good money for this property, and I intend to take possession of it today. Now, you can either leave voluntarily, or I'll be forced to call the authorities and have you removed." I crossed my arms, planting my feet firmly on the ground. "Go ahead and call them. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, and I'm not leaving." She narrowed her eyes at me, then pulled out her phone. Fine. Have it your way?" She dialed a number and held the phone to her ear. "Yes, Sheriff? I need your assistance at the old Johnson farm. There's a squatter here refusing to leave my property." My jaw dropped. Squatter? Who did this woman think she was? I couldn't believe what was happening. As she continued her conversation with the sheriff, I pulled out my own phone and called my parents. They were on a rare vacation, their first in years, and I hated to bother them, but this was an emergency. Mom? I said when she picked up. "We've got a problem. There's a woman here claiming she bought the farm. She's called the sheriff to try and have me removed." "What?" my mom exclaimed. "That's ridiculous. We haven't sold anything." "Don't worry, honey. Your father and I will sort this out. Just wait for the sheriff to arrive and explain the situation. We'll call our lawyer right away." I hung up, feeling slightly better knowing my parents were on the case. The woman, I'd started thinking of her as Karen in my head, was pacing back and forth, tapping her foot impatiently. "The sheriff will be here soon," she announced smugly. "I hope you're ready to leave." I shook my head. "I'm not going anywhere. This is all a big misunderstanding, and we'll get it sorted out when the sheriff arrives." We stood there in tense silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only about 20 minutes. Finally, we heard the sound of another vehicle approaching. The familiar sheriff's cruiser pulled up beside Karen's SUV. Sheriff Tom stepped out, his weathered face creased with concern. He'd known my family for years and had been a friend of my grandfather's. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, looking between Karen and me. Karen stepped forward, brandishing her folder of papers. "Sheriff, I'm so glad you're here. This man is trespassing on my property and refusing to leave. I've recently purchased this land, and I need your help removing him." Sheriff Tom turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "Is that true, son?" I shook my head vehemently. "No, sir. There's been some kind of mistake. This farm has been in my family for generations. We haven't sold it to anyone. My parents are on vacation, but I just spoke to them, and they're as confused as I am." The sheriff nodded slowly, then turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, can I see those papers you're holding?" Karen handed over the folder with a triumphant smirk. Sheriff Tom opened it and began to examine the documents inside, his brow furrowing as he read. "Ma'am," he said after a few minutes, "where did you get these documents?" Karen's smirk faltered slightly. "From my real estate agent, of course." "Why?" Sheriff Tom sighed, shaking his head. "I'm afraid these papers aren't legitimate. For one thing, they're dated 3 years from now. For another, the property description doesn't match this farm. It seems you've been the victim of a scam." Karen's face went pale, then red with anger. What? That's impossible. I paid $500,000 for this property. I couldn't help but let out a low whistle. $500,000? Our farm was worth way more than that, but still, it was a lot of money to lose to a scam. Sheriff Tom's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, ma'am, but it looks like you've been defrauded. I'd be happy to take a report and start an investigation into your real estate agent. But as for this farm, it legally belongs to the Johnson family. You have no claim to it. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She snatched the papers back from the sheriff, rifling through them frantically. No, 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 she muttered. This can't be happening. Do you have any idea who I am? I want to speak to your superior. Sheriff Tom's voice took on a stern tone. Ma'am, I am the superior around here. Now, I suggest you calm down and come down to the station with me to file a report. We'll do everything we can to help you recover your money, but this farm is not yours. Karen's face contorted with rage. She turned to me, jabbing a finger in my direction. This is your fault somehow. I'll sue you for everything you've got. I held up my hands defensively. Lady, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry you got scammed, but that has nothing to do with me or my family. Sheriff Tom stepped between us. That's enough. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave this property now. You're trespassing, and if you don't go voluntarily, I'll have to arrest you. Karen looked like she was about to explode, but something in Sheriff Tom's steady gaze must have gotten through to her. She let out a frustrated scream, then stormed back to her SUV. This isn't over, she yelled as she got in. You'll be hearing from my lawyers. We watched as she peeled out of the driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust in her wake. Sheriff Tom turned to me with a weary smile. You okay, son? I nodded, still feeling a bit shell-shocked. Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Sheriff. I can't believe that just happened. He patted me on the shoulder. People can surprise you, and not always in a good way. I'll keep an eye out in case she decides to come back, but I don't think you'll have any more trouble from her. You might want to consider putting up some no trespassing signs though, just in case. I agreed, thanking him again as he got back in his cruiser and drove off. As the dust settled, I stood there for a moment, looking out over the fields my family had tended for generations. I felt a renewed appreciation for this land and the legacy it represented. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my troubles with Karen. Over the next few months, she would make it her mission to try and take our farm by any means necessary. But with the help of Sheriff Tom, our family lawyer, and the tight-knit community we were part of, we would face each new challenge head-on. The next encounter came about 2 weeks later. I was out in the field checking on our corn crop when I heard the now familiar sound of Karen's SUV coming up the drive. This time she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive-looking suit was with her. I made my way back to the house, arriving just as they got out of the car. Karen's face twisted into a sneer when she saw me. There he is, she said to her companion. The thief who stole my property. The man in the suit stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Johnson, I'm Arthur Fitzgerald, Ms. Brentwood's attorney. We're here to discuss the matter of this property's ownership. I didn't take his hand. There's nothing to discuss. This farm belongs to my family. The sheriff already confirmed that. Mr. Fitzgerald's smile didn't waver. Yes, well, we believe there may have been some irregularities in the property records. We're prepared to offer you a generous sum to vacate the premises and transfer ownership to my client. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I already told you, this farm is not for sale. It never was? Your client got scammed, and that's unfortunate, but it has nothing to do with us. Karen pushed past her lawyer, getting right in my face. Listen here, you backwoods hick. I always get what I want, and I want this farm. Name your price. I took a step back, trying to keep my cool. Ma'am, I don't know how to make this any clearer. This farm is not for sale. Not for any price. It's been in my family for generations, and that's how it's going to stay. Mr. Fitzgerald cleared his throat. Mr. Johnson, I'd advise you to reconsider. My client is prepared to take legal action if necessary. It could get very expensive for you. That was it? I'd had enough. You know what? I'm done being nice. You want to talk legal action? Fine. Let's talk about harassment, trespassing, and making false claims. You're on private property right now, and you're not welcome here. Leave now, or I'm calling the sheriff. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? I'll ruin you. I pulled out my phone. Last warning? Get off my property now. Mr. Fitzgerald must have realized things were getting out of hand. He put a hand on Karen's arm. Ms. Brentwood, I think we should go. We can pursue this through proper legal channels. Karen shrugged off his hand but allowed him to lead her back to the SUV. As they were getting in, she turned back to me. This isn't over. I'll see you in court. I watched them drive away, my heart pounding. Once they were out of sight, I let out a long breath and called my parents. They had returned from their vacation and were just as bewildered by this whole situation as I was. Don't worry, son, my dad said after I filled him in. We'll call our lawyer and make sure all our paperwork is in order. This woman doesn't have a leg to stand on. Over the next few weeks, we received a series of increasingly threatening letters from Mr. Fitzgerald's law firm. They claimed to have found discrepancies in our property records, alleged that we were violating various obscure zoning laws, and even suggested that our great-grandfather had obtained the land through fraudulent means. Our family lawyer, Sarah Thompson, assured us that it was all nonsense. "They're just trying to scare you," she said during one of our meetings. "They have no real case, so they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Don't worry, we'll fight this every step of the way." And fight we did. Karen filed a lawsuit against us, claiming rightful ownership of the farm. We countersued for harassment and legal fees. The whole ordeal was stressful and expensive, but we weren't about to let some entitled rich woman steal our family legacy. The case dragged on for months. Karen's lawyers tried every trick in the book, but Sarah was always one step ahead. She dug up records going back over 100 years, proving our continuous ownership of the land. She brought in experts to testify about the validity of our documents and the ridiculousness of Karen's claims. Throughout it all, our community rallied around us. Neighbors helped out on the farm when we had to be in court. Local businesses put up signs supporting us. Even Sheriff Tom testified on our behalf, recounting Karen's first visit and the clearly fraudulent documents she had presented. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge was ready to make his ruling. The courtroom was packed as we all stood to hear the verdict. In the matter of Brentwood versus Johnson, the judge began, "I find in favor of the defendant. The plaintiff's claims are without merit, and this court recognizes the Johnson family as the rightful owners of the property in question." A cheer went up from our supporters. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it wasn't over yet. The judge continued, "Furthermore, I find the plaintiff's lawsuit to be frivolous and brought in bad faith. Ms. Brentwood is hereby ordered to pay all of the defendant's legal fees and is barred from bringing any further action regarding this property." Karen let out a shriek of outrage. "This is ridiculous. I'll appeal. I'll take this all the way to the Supreme Court if I have to." The judge's gavel came down hard. "Ms. Brentwood, you will comport yourself with dignity in my courtroom, or I will hold you in contempt. This ruling is final. Court is adjourned." As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught sight of Karen arguing furiously with her lawyer. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered all the stress and trouble she'd put my family through, and the feeling passed. Outside, we were met by a group of cheering friends and neighbors. Sarah was grinning from ear to ear. "Congratulations," she said, shaking my hand. "Justice prevailed today." My parents hugged me tight. "It's over," my mom said, tears in her eyes. "We did it." But even as we celebrated, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done with us yet. And I was right. A few days after the court ruling, I was out checking the fences when I heard a commotion coming from the direction of the house. I hurried back to find a scene of chaos. Karen was there, along with a group of people carrying signs and chanting. They had formed a line across our driveway, effectively blocking access to the farm. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded as I approached. Karen turned to me, a manic gleam in her eye. "We're protesting this illegal occupation of my land. These people know the truth. They know you stole this farm from me." I looked at the protesters. Most of them seemed confused, like they weren't entirely sure why they were there. A few were filming everything on their phones. "Lady, you've lost your mind," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "The court already ruled. This farm belongs to my family. You need to leave. Now?" One of the protesters, a young man with a scraggly beard, piped up. "Man," she said, "you stole her land. Is that true?" I shook my head in disbelief. "No, it's not true. This woman tried to claim our family farm through a lawsuit, and she lost. The court ruled that we are the rightful owners, as we have been for over 100 years. Some of the protesters started to look uncertain. I could see them glancing at each other, doubt creeping into their expressions. Karen, sensing she was losing her audience, ramped up the drama. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Please, please," she wailed. "This land is all I have left. They're trying to take everything from me." I had to admire her acting skills, but enough was enough. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sheriff Tom's number. "Sheriff, it's me again. I hate to bother you, but Karen's back. She's brought a group of protesters and they're blocking access to our farm." "I'm on my way," he replied, sounding weary but determined. While we waited for the sheriff to arrive, I tried to reason with the protesters. "Look, folks, I understand you think you're fighting for a good cause here, but you've been misled. We have court documents proving our ownership of this land. What you're doing right now is trespassing." A few of the protesters lowered their signs, looking uncomfortable. One woman spoke up, "But she said you forged those documents. That you bribed the judge?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Ma'am, if I had the kind of money to bribe a judge, do you think I'd be working this farm every day? We're just a regular family trying to protect what's ours." Karen jumped to her feet, her earlier tears miraculously gone. "Don't listen to him. He's trying to trick you." Just then, we heard the sound of approaching vehicles. Sheriff Tom pulled up in his cruiser, followed by 2 more deputy cars. The sight of law enforcement caused many of the protesters to back away nervously. Sheriff Tom got out of his car and surveyed the scene, shaking his head. He walked over to where Karen and I were standing. "Ms. Brentwood," he said, his voice stern, "I thought we'd been through this already. You have no claim to this property. You're trespassing, and you've brought others to trespass with you." Karen's face contorted with rage. "You're all in on it. This is a conspiracy." Sheriff Tom turned to address the protesters. "Folks, I'm going to need you all to disperse immediately. You're on private property without permission. Anyone still here in the next 5 minutes will be arrested for trespassing." The protesters didn't need to be told twice. They quickly gathered their signs and started to leave, many of them shooting apologetic looks in my direction as they went. Karen, however, wasn't going quietly. "You can't do this," she screamed, grabbing onto my arm. "This is my land." Mine? Sheriff Tom nodded to one of his deputies, who came over and gently but firmly removed Karen's grip from my arm. "Ms. Brentwood, you're under arrest for trespassing, harassment, and disturbing the peace. You have the right to remain silent." As the deputy led Karen to one of the patrol cars, she continued to shout and make threats. "I'll sue you all. I'll destroy you. This isn't over." Once Karen was secured in the back of the patrol car, Sheriff Tom turned to me with a sympathetic look. "I'm sorry about all this. We'll make sure she faces consequences this time. You might want to consider getting a restraining order." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Thanks, Sheriff. I think we'll do that." As the patrol cars drove away, I stood there for a moment, looking out over the fields that had been in my family for generations. Despite all the trouble Karen had caused, I felt a renewed appreciation for this land and what it meant to us. Over the next few weeks, things finally started to calm down. We got a restraining order against Karen, and she seemed to have finally gotten the message. We heard through the grapevine that she was facing multiple charges and had been ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation. One evening, about a month after the protest incident, I was sitting on the porch with my parents, enjoying the sunset after a long day of work. "You know," my dad said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I'm proud of how you handled all this, son. You stood your ground and protected our family legacy." My mom nodded in agreement. "Your great-grandfather would be proud too. He always said this land was meant to stay in the family." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the setting sun. "Thanks. I'm just glad it's over. I never thought we'd have to fight so hard to keep what's rightfully ours." "That's the thing about entitlement," my dad mused. "Some people think they can just take whatever they want, regardless of who it belongs to or how hard others have worked for it." "Well, she learned her lesson the hard way," I said. "I almost feel sorry for her." "Almost?" We all chuckled at that. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the hills, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. Our farm had weathered many storms over the years, droughts, floods, economic hardships, and now we could add entitled Karen to that list. The next morning, I woke up early as usual and went about my chores. As I worked, I thought about everything we'd been through and how it had brought our family and community closer together. I realized that in her misguided attempt to take our land, Karen had inadvertently reminded us all of its true value. It wasn't just about the acreage or the crops or the buildings. It was about the history, the memories, the blood and sweat and tears that had gone into making this farm what it was. It was about the sense of belonging, of being rooted to a place and a way of life. As I finished up in the barn, I saw a car coming up the driveway. For a moment, my heart raced, thinking Karen might be back. But then I recognized the vehicle. It was Mr. Thompson, our nearest neighbor. "Morning," he called out as he got out of his truck. "Thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing. Heard you had quite the excitement lately." I walked over to greet him, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Morning, Mr. Thompson. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, but things are settling down now." He nodded, looking out over the fields. "Good to hear. You know, what happened to you folks got me thinking. I've been considering selling off some of my land, getting older, you know, and it's hard to keep up with it all. But after seeing how hard you fought for your place, well, it reminded me why I've held on to it all these years." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm glad to hear that, sir. This land? It means everything to us." Mr. Thompson clapped me on the shoulder. "I can see that, son. You Johnsons have always been good neighbors and good stewards of the land. Your great-grandfather would be proud to see how you're carrying on his legacy." We chatted for a while longer before Mr. Thompson headed back home. As I watched him drive away, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Our fight against Karen hadn't just been about protecting our own farm, it had reminded our whole community about the importance of preserving our agricultural heritage. In the months that followed, life on the farm returned to its normal rhythms. We planted and harvested, tended to the animals, and made repairs and improvements as needed. But there was a new energy to our work, a deeper appreciation for what we had. We never heard directly from Karen again, but news of her fate trickled down to us. She had been convicted on several charges and ordered to pay significant fines. More importantly, she had been barred from any further real estate transactions in the county. 1 year to the day after Karen's first appearance on our farm, we decided to host a community barbecue. It wasn't just a celebration of our victory, but a thank you to all the friends and neighbors who had stood by us. As I looked around at the gathering, families laughing, kids playing, old-timers swapping stories, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Karen had tried to take all this away from us, but in the end, she had only made us appreciate it more. Sheriff Tom was there too, off duty and enjoying a plate of ribs. He wandered over to where I was standing. "Quite a turnout," he remarked, gesturing at the crowd. I nodded. "Yeah, it's great to see everyone here. And to be honest, we probably have Karen to thank for it, in a weird way." The sheriff chuckled. "Funny how things work out sometimes. You know, in all my years on the job, I've dealt with a lot of entitled people, but she really took the cake. Any word on what happened to her?" I asked, curious despite myself. Sheriff Tom shook his head. "Last I heard, she'd moved out of state, probably for the best. Some people just can't admit when they're wrong, you know." I nodded, thinking about how differently things could have turned out if Karen had just accepted the truth from the beginning. As the sun began to set on our gathering, casting a golden glow over the fields, I found myself standing with my parents, looking out over the land that had been in our family for generations. "You know," my mom said softly, "I think this whole ordeal has been a blessing in disguise. It's brought us all closer together." My dad nodded in agreement, and it's reminded us of what's really important. This land, this community, it's worth fighting for. I couldn't have agreed more. As I watched our friends and neighbors enjoying themselves, I felt a deep sense of peace. Karen had tried to take our land, but in the end, she had only strengthened our connection to it. The entitled Karen who had tried to seize our family farm had unknowingly taught us all a valuable lesson about the true meaning of ownership. It wasn't just about legal documents or property lines. It was about the love, hard work, and dedication that goes into caring for a piece of land over generations. As the last of our guests said their goodbyes and headed home, I took one final walk around the property. The field stretched out before me, bathed in the soft light of dusk. I could almost feel the presence of my ancestors, the ones who had worked this land before me, who had poured their lives into making it what it was today. I made a silent promise to them, and to myself, that I would always protect this legacy. No matter what challenges came our way, this farm would remain a part of our family, a testament to the power of perseverance and the strength of community. As I headed back to the house, I couldn't help but smile. Karen had tried to take our land, but in the end, she had only reaffirmed who really owned it, not just legally, but in every way that truly mattered. And for that, in a strange way, I was almost grateful. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.